Okay, so when were you first? Well, two questions. When did you and or your parents start to notice that something was up, and then when did you eventually get diagnosed with ADHD?
All right, so when I was in, I think it might have been preschool actually. My mom saved this note from the teachers, like, I'm not sure if he needs special education or if he's gifted. And
why not both?
I know, right? So it was actually age 7 when I was officially diagnosed, because I was doing extremely well in some parts of school and really awful in others. And once I was able to kind of get that support, things definitely changed a lot. So,
and you said around age 7 is when you were diagnosed? Age
7, yeah.
Yeah. So I was... It's honestly hard for me to remember. I know that it was later than you. My parents were just told that I was, like, gifted. Like, I was pretty good at just, like, all school in general at first. I think you can rejoin by pressing A, by the way.
Oh, I need HP.
Oh, you need... So how do I get you back? What do I have to do? Do I need to collect something for you? Rejoining.
Maybe it's a good time to ask me a long question.
Yeah. So basically, it was around the same time. I think I didn't get actually... My parents noticed it was an issue around the age that you got diagnosed. And I didn't get diagnosed until I was like 15, and then was promptly put on Adderall for better or worse.
Yeah, you mentioned it being socially acceptable. Like, what is it about medication that...
I meant coffee. I meant caffeine.
I don't know, but you said that like you were doing it before, but now it's not like working for you?
Well, I don't need it. I don't need it to function anymore. But I was taking it.
Right.
I was taking Vyvanse every day for like 3 or 4 months, and it got to the point where like I couldn't even get out of bed without it. Like, I was using it as like a way to get out of bed. And then eventually, I just didn't get any more and didn't have access to it. And I had like a very busy weekend, so I couldn't make it happen. And then 2 days went by and I was fine. And then a week went by, and that's all credit to the coping mechanisms and the support system that I put together at that time. So, but yeah, I'm at a point now where it is not necessary for me to have stimulant medication because of, well, let's be honest, because of Charming running my life.
That's great. I mean, I always think like the medication, that can be like, it can only help you like about 25%, like,
yeah,
it can be a big help, but it's never going to solve everything on its own. And it also means that, you can be totally fine without it. It's just like one of the many tools in the toolbox.
And yeah, and for me, taking essentially amphetamines every day there's just no way I can justify that as healthy. I'm like, that's definitely bad for me. There's no, to a certain degree, taking that every single morning is going to be bad for the human body. Like, it's amphetamines. Just because they're prescribing it to kids doesn't mean it's good for them, but it is very helpful.
There haven't been a lot of studies as far as like the long-term effects yet.
Well, they love prescribing it. Everybody can use ADHD medication because it turns out that amphetamines and stimulants are very helpful and make you feel like you don't need to sleep or eat and you're invincible. So I had a problem with abuse when I first got prescribed Adderall as a young teenager. I immediately got like addicted to it and was not able to self-regulate my dosage and stuff. So I eventually, wasn't allowed to be on it anymore. You said that you were good at some subjects and not as good at others. Which subjects were those?
Definitely really good at math, but it was just any type of homework that required just, like a lot of hours on my own. It just
like
wasn't
focus.
happening. And
yeah.
And that was part of the problem, is that like I was young and did really well, and then got put into these like really advanced classes, and just they expected so much more work at that point, and then it just didn't work. And that's why I ended up being like lower classes after that, but then eventually like getting to college and finding stuff I was actually interested in, I did great again.
Yeah, like once it was something that you cared about, then it was easier to focus on it.
Yeah, exactly.
I have this really distinct memory. Also, this gameplay is going beautifully, by the way. This is exactly what I wanted. You can just see that Red in the chat said you guys are sharing one brain cell on this gameplay. Just exactly what I wanted.
I also have like quite a bit of a lag here, so it's even more fun.
Yeah, like you're already. We're both at a mental handicap, and you're at a physical handicap right now. A digital physical handicap currently. Yeah, the lag on Steam Remote Play is not great. But I have this very distinct memory. Oh, what's up, DJ JD? Yeah, DJ JD says always felt cracked out on Vyvanse. Not a good feeling. You're on Concerta, but it sucks. Go ahead.
I still take basically like a microdose of Ritalin.
Fuck.
And that works for me.
So you take like like not even a starting dose, like less than that?
Maybe not microdose, maybe like half of like what some people are. Some friends that I have.
Gotcha.
But yeah, the biggest thing you have to watch out for long term is really like heart health. So it's just really important to be in shape, like exercise, like just because even though the thing is like long term studies are still kind of like in the works on this. Like there's many that have been like going on for decades, and it's just they haven't like released it yet. So that's like the biggest thing we're looking for, is that we're kind of operating in unknown ground as far as the long term thing, because it's like this is a relatively new thing for society. But yeah, I mean, like if you can, like I've had like definitely some of my best clients have never are like totally off of it, so you don't need it at all. But also I don't think it should be demonized, because like if it doesn't work for you, then don't do it, and if it does, like don't freak out about it.
I mean, it's just about being able to live your life. If it helps you live your life, then you should consider it as a possibility.
Yeah. But also, you do not need it. Like, and I love that little animation.
This game's beautiful.
I've never played Shovel Knight before, so.
Oh, really?
I'm just like loving. Yeah.
So we should clarify that you grew up. You're quite a bit older than me. How old are you?
I just turned 40.
Yeah, so I'm 34. So. You're like a full 2 high school careers older than me, so you grew up with the NES like in a big way.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, this whole game is like a big love letter to like Mega Man and DuckTales and like all the classic platformers. I can't believe you haven't played this. This is awesome.
Yeah.
I love how intuitively you just picked up the controls. I mean, it literally just controls like DuckTales basically.
Yeah, jump hit stuff.
And I love that the color palette is like. It's more of a Game Boy Color palette than like an NES color palette, because the Game Boy Color had more to work with. But anyway, I have a very distinct memory that you reminded me of that I wanted to share of when I was blah 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 blah. We're talking about important stuff, dude. Jeez. Basically, we're trying to save our girlfriend, or maybe just best friend. I don't know. She's a female character that we like. So yeah, I remember when I was really young, before I had been diagnosed. All right, this is a boss battle, by the way. I'm going to try to tell this story and beat this first boss with you. There was an assignment that needed to be done, and my parents would always help me with my homework, because in the 3rd grade, I just tried to get away with not doing homework at all. And that worked until, the parent-teacher conference happened, and it was like, he's done 0 of it. I thought I was a genius in 3rd grade. I just I can just lie about doing my homework. But anyway, after that happened, my parents, started helping with me with my homework to hold me accountable and make sure that I got it done. And that's where they started to run into the executive dysfunction problem. And I remember this one assignment where my parents were just getting so frustrated with me. And, I look back on it now, and basically it was just like why, it was like, why won't you just do it? Like, just get it done with, and then you don't have to do it anymore. And I'm like, I understand that. I don't know why I can't do it. I just can't, and I'm like fucking freaking out. And I look back on it, and it's like, oh yeah, well, I wasn't interested in the assignment, or I needed to take a break. Like, those were the 2 options, but they didn't realize that, and they just thought, no, you have to sit here until you get it done. And like, that's not how an ADHD brain works.
This is the hardest thing for people to understand, is that like, and even for us to understand the fact that, okay, I want to do something. I'm a capable person. I know how to do it. I sit down. I'm like, I'm going to do this, and it doesn't happen. Like, it doesn't make sense to people. It doesn't make sense to us, but it's like, it's the reality. And like, learning how to deal with that, like, you need like 50 different tools, but it is possible. It's just, it's never easy.
As an adult with ADHD, as someone who's an expert, what are the symptoms that you still find? You told me earlier, like, things still pop up and you realize that you're still not completely in control. Like, what are the types of symptoms that still kind of catch up to you, even though you're 40, you're an adult, I refuse to use any other attack on this man.
It's a lot harder to hit moving targets with this leg.
Yeah, I'm trying to carry.
Okay.
You can get him.
Oh man,
He be jumping. Stop jumping, bro. How much damage did... Oh, he's almost dead. There we go. We got it.
Yeah, there we go.
What are the types of Simpsons?
It's really just doing the things that don't let you up at all, that are difficult, and that you're worried you're going to do a bad job on. Because, like, you think about what it really is procrastination. It's like something in your subconscious that's arguing with your conscious brain, your prefrontal cortex. Because the prefrontal cortex, that's like the logic. It says, okay, I'm going to do this, all the planning things. But 95% of your brain is subconscious, and it comes in and it's like, well, no, you're not. And then figuring out the why of that no, you're not is really key to beating ADHD. And imposter syndrome is a big one, being like, I'm not like actually good enough to do this, or thinking that like I haven't put enough effort in, or maybe I'm like falling too behind on this. Notice all these fears that like really just come from like our animal brain. Thinking about like prehistoric humans. You have these tribal societies, and if you're kicked out of the society, like you will literally die. And so we have that's what I think where a lot of like the rejection sensitivity dysphoria comes from is. Like the parts of our brain that processes emotions are like literally wired differently than a neurotypical brain. So that's a lot. I mean, that answer could be 15 minutes long. So. Oh yeah. Well, yeah,
my goal is to get you talking about ADHD, especially because we have people in the audience who are perhaps undiagnosed or are thinking about, finding out if they have it. So I think, ADHD comes in a lot of different forms. I'll start with an example of, one of the things that was always a problem for me and took me literally over a decade to fix was I was always losing my watch or my phone or my wallet or my keys. I was always losing those things and having to replace them. The way that I fixed it is now literally every day before I leave the house and before, like, every time I walk out of the front door, every time I get out of a car door, and every time I leave someplace, I say phone, wallet, keys, and I physically touch phone, wallet, keys in my pockets. And it took me years for that to be a habit. Even trying to do phone, wallet, keys as a coping mechanism still didn't work for years, even though I was trying to make it a habit. I was still fucking it up, So, that's like I don't know. Can you relate to this? You just set things down. Yeah. Can you just set shit down anywhere and you don't take stock of where you put it at all. And then like for hours, you're like, where the fuck is this thing? And it's like, you put it like in your sock drawer because you were putting your socks away and you needed a free hand. You know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah. When I was packing the other day, my phone ended up under my bed just because it was in my hand and I'm on my bedroom floor packing for MagWest. And that one took me a while. But all these things like that habit you just described is brilliant. And that's the kind of thing you need to do more and more of. And this is kind of a contradiction for people with ADHD, is that habits are harder than normal for us to form, but habits are also at the same time really important for us to form because they're one of the things that can really save us.
Well, I think I've seen you post about how people with ADHD, like, maybe I haven't seen you post about it, but I've seen ADHD posts about how, forming a habit is not just a natural thing that we can do. They say it takes 30 days to form a habit, but for someone with ADHD, like, a habit is more like a thing that you can confidently remember how to do, but each day is kind of a crapshoot which collection of those habits you are able to remember to do or have the executive function to do. So it's like, you know that showering is a habit, and you know that eating breakfast is a habit, and you know that taking the trash out is a habit and feeding your pets is a habit, but like every morning it's like you do those in a different order, and sometimes you don't do one of them, and it's like, it's never truly like, it's really hard to get it actually locked in as what other people would consider a habit.
Right. It's much harder, but you need to do it anyway. Like, figure out how to do it, write it down somewhere, practice for 90 days instead of 30, because it'll save you. It'll literally save your life.
Yeah.
To be able to get things done, because like, this is true for everybody, not just people with ADHD, is that, we only have so much willpower per day, and that's really the point of habits, is to allow you to do something without having to put that mental energy, because every time that you have to think about something, that you're just like depleting that health bar so much, so yeah, like doing things in the same order, putting things in the same place, it just means you have to think about it less, you have to use your brain less, and that saves your brain for those other things that you still need to work on. Input is disabled again. All right.
Oh, my bad. It's because I keep navigating away. Anytime I click out of the window. Oh yeah, this is Vert's. This is Jake Kaufman's self-insert character, the composer.
Love it.
Yeah,
so I have like a morning routine that's actually extremely long, more so than it's actually convenient, but just because that's required to get any of these things done.
Okay. And I'm so curious.
And like sometimes I'll do things out of this, out of order, but I still have that thing where sometimes like I'll forget something, like, oh, I need to go back and get it. But practicing it at all, like, it definitely leveled up my executive function, which is funny because then when I travel, everything's out of place. Like in a hotel room, I'm like, oh shit, what do I do now? And like, I was just kind of laughing with Rob when I was at MagWest. So I'm like, I'm really sorry, because like my executive function is like 3 times lower than it used to be at 88-bit. I just started to take these for granted because I'm like, oh yeah, I'm like pretty functional now, but like, oh no, it's so dependent on being in the same place, having everything in the same places, doing the same things every day at the same times, and just to have like some kind of semblance of being automatic with that.
And I actually really like hotel rooms because to me, this isn't really ADHD, but to me they feel like it's like you're moving into a new apartment. So I like to get into a hotel room and like set everything up perfectly at the start and like treat it like a little house, which is always nice for me because it's easier for me to compartmentalize. Like it's a simpler version of home for me. And in a lot of ways, I have better executive function when I'm traveling because of that, for whatever reason. But, for me, even something like being hungover will completely rattle. That'll rattle that security of like being in the same place and feeling the same way and doing the same stuff every day. And it gets really hard to get back into good habits simply because I've just drank too much the night before. You know what I mean? So that's interesting.
Really important with the hotel room there is getting some kind of like level of hyper focus just because you're motivated and you're in a hotel room like, oh yeah, this is a new home, and you get this motivation. You're like, oh, that's kind of fun. I'm gonna like set up my new home, and that gives you the motivation to do it. Whereas like if you wait a few days, it's probably not gonna be there anymore. And that's like any chance you get to like latch on to a little bit of hyper focus, you gotta take advantage of it because like how can you make things fun? And I like how you said, oh, this is my new home, and that's going to be really motivating for that reason. And there's like any chance where you can set up some kind of organization system with your, hyper focus, or even just like seeing something as fun to take care of yourself later when you don't have that executive function, whether you're hungover or whether you're just burnt out doing the same thing every day. You're just like, whatever, I'm just going to follow my system. I've got it written down. I've got it posted on this wall. And then, so like taking care of your future self when you do have that excitement.
That's, so I think we should probably talk about hyper fixation and hyper focus, because you brought up something when we were talking on the phone that I had never thought of, that hyper focus also exists on a long-term scale as well as a short-term, which you didn't say that, but you mentioned something like, something like doing a certain thing in your career was really exciting at first, but it eventually gets old. Like, I extended that to like, oh, when I first started remixing video game music, it was new and exciting, and like anytime I find ways to make it fresh, I can get into it again. But I'm very much at a point where now like it's lost its luster, and I never thought of it in terms of like maybe that's a part of just the fact that like I'm the hyper fixation, the hyper focus on video game remixes has now sort of passed, rather than like, it's not necessarily an organic, maybe if I was neurodivergent, if I was neurotypical, like I would just never get tired of it, who knows? But yeah, I would like to hear you talk about just like hyper focus in general and like the different ways that it presents itself and how it can be used for good, and you sort of harnessing it rather than letting it control you.
Yeah,
Also,
there's a few different things there that I wanted to touch on. The one about like getting really excited about something that's new and losing that, it can be a little bit tragic because you never really know how much to follow that tendency, because you don't want to fight it too much. Like as ADHD brains, like we're going to get bored of things, and trying to force yourself to keep doing something that you just doesn't excite you anymore. Oh, flame.
I think we have to hit him. I think we have to hit him. Yeah.
Okay.
No, go on.
Okay. Yeah.
Typical ADHD haver. This is amazing. No,
you were absolutely right when you planned this and be like, oh, this is going to be impossible. And yeah.
So, do you remember what you were saying?
Yes. And I have like some of my clients come in like, how can I like get better at doing this like, very boring neurotypical task? And I'd be like, you might just never be good at this. But they have to, like accepting that and realizing that like I am, I have other abilities that neurotypical person might struggle with. That's a much better way to go instead of trying to like fit yourself into some like a square peg in a round hole that's just never going to like exactly work out. Like
simply the acceptance that I don't know if this is too strong of a word, but ADHD is a disability. Ask any of the people who I think
of it as a brain type, really.
Sure, but it can feel like a disability, and I think that there's there is power in accepting that sometimes you're just less able to do things compared to other people, and like if you accept it, then it allows you to like work within your limitations instead of like getting stuck beating yourself up about it.
Yeah, and it's like I've struggled for a long time with exactly how to define this because I talk about it a lot online. So like you kind of need to have an answer. It's like, is it a disability? Is it a superpower? Is it a brain type? I've settled with brain type because it's like literally the brain develops differently, and you have to figure out, okay, what can I do better? And I think now it does come with more, downsides than upsides. But I feel like almost all the downsides can be worked around once you know how. And then you're left with just this really creative brain that can do all these things, that gets excited about all these new projects, and you have the capability to do that. But it's not going to be easy to get around all those things. And that's why it's like really important to be like, if you have ADHD, like identify what you're not good at and develop a plan for all those things instead of just ignoring it and being in denial about it.
No, yeah, I think that by default it is not a net positive, but it has like you said, it has the potential to be a net positive if you find techniques and tools and coping mechanisms that are healthy and actually help curb the negative sides of it. When I was growing up, it was always you need to make lists, you need to have an agenda, you need to have a calendar, you need to have a booklet, and that shit never worked. I could never even be motivated to do it. And even when I did, I still forgot everything. It was just like, no, every single person you would talk to, well, you just got to make lists, and you got to double check your lists, and you got to have calendars, and you got to set reminders. And like none of those things ever worked for me. And like, when I eventually,
here's the thing.
Now that's not to say that I don't use them. Don't get me wrong. It's just like, back when I was being told to do it and I was trying it, like it was not like this one size fits all, and like it was kind of the only advice I was getting from anybody, right? But it's not to say that lists aren't important. Like I still use them, but my lists are extremely disorganized, and they die in 3 days and I never look at them again, but they help in the short term, And
that's the way I've structured my program, like working with clients, is that we don't start with the lists, we don't start with the organization, because without the motivation, it just doesn't work. Because like with hyperfocus, like when you have a new project, you probably do you make lists when you work on songs, like just like notes and stuff?
Generally, if I'm very motivated to finish a song, or like I have to meet a deadline, there will be like, okay, these are the things we still have yet to do and we want to remember, and like I will use those notes, especially when doing collabs. But it is always projects that either I'm excited to finish, or I need to finish, or I get in trouble, It
comes down to, it's like, we need all these lists and reminders and all of the really organizational things that everyone just kind of like goes to as their first advice.
Yeah.
But they're not going to work without motivation.
Interesting. Okay.
So it comes down to like, we need the motivation. We need to prioritize getting that first. But we also need to figure out, like, is there anything else that's a source of procrastination that is, like I was talking about earlier, the the emotional side of things, where you're just like, you have imposter syndrome, where you just think you're not good enough. But you need the why. Like, without that, everything else is useless. You have to believe in what you're doing, especially if you like also have depression, which goes along with ADHD. To be able to like look towards the future and then be like, I'm doing this for a reason that matters to me. This lights me up in some way. You need that, and that gives you the ability to do some more mundane things too, because you have the reason, the why behind it.
So did you say Monday things? Is that just mundane?
Mundane, yeah.
I like calling mundane tasks like Monday things. Yo, what's up, Floopy? How you doing, buddy? Yo, Floopy, here's your emote. Sorry, you probably just lost control of the game, but I got to show Floopy the emote of his own face. I want to dig more into that. Like, that's always I've always just considered myself like a naturally passionate or like self-righteous person. Like, I always feel like, I need to, like, I have a strong sense of what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And I'm starting to think that like maybe that's not just a personality trait, but actually a side effect of I just literally refuse to do anything that I don't feel a strong sense of purpose about, which you could tie that back to having ADHD, honestly.
Yeah, the motivation part is really tricky, and there's two types of motivation, and you mentioned that like with a collab where you have to do it because
there's people depending on me.
Yeah. And so there's a positive motivation, and negative motivation is maybe get this some snacks. That's not a snack.
I think that is not a snack. You're right. I think negative motivation is like advanced level stuff. Like, I wasn't good with negative motivation, and I would let people down all the time until I had restructured my life and my business around my mental illness. It's like, okay, I know I'm never going to be, I was like, I know that emails are never going to be easy for me, so I need to hire someone to send emails for me. Find someone who it doesn't use any of their spoons and it's easy for them. And that's how you end up with like somebody like Charming. But before when I was just constantly doing too much and overworking myself, I was letting people down constantly, and that no amount of negative motivation or external consequences could get me to do the damn thing if I just couldn't. You know what I mean? I do find it really interesting that basically my main treatment for ADHD. Now, to be clear, ADHD would not be really a problem for me at all if I was just Ben Briggs, content creator / musician. If I was just that, and I wasn't also running a record label and trying to build a community and trying to throw events, like, the Tiny Waves thing was me sort of painting outside the lines and growing outside of my means. And like, that's what always, I know for a fact that if I was only running my brand, ADHD I would have it licked. You know what I mean? But because I'm crazy enough to do so many different things, I literally need a support system and staff and everything to help me manage it. But
the other day is that if you can do all of your dreams on your own, you're not dreaming big enough. And I think that's doubly so. There's a book. I feel like every time they like release a new version, they give it a different title. I think the latest one is called just like Adult ADHD. What it's really about is being an entrepreneur with ADHD, which is really, really common because we have so many ideas we're always excited about.
And we can't do anything unless we're excited about it and we thought of it.
Yeah. But that's a huge advantage for an entrepreneur. But they say like one of the biggest tips they have is just like find a neurotypical person to work with you. And I know, so I'm like, yeah, that's...
Hiring people who are at least more neurotypical than I am, or or at least neurodivergent in a complementary way,
or just don't have ADHD.
Exactly, just people who don't have fucking ADHD. But yeah, that hiring Charming as my manager and hiring Steph as our social media manager, the reason for hiring those people was because, me and Polycore, Evan, who run Tiny Waves, like, we had all this great content coming up, and we were like, okay, we have not been reliable about posting to social media or, getting things done in a timely fashion. we have all this great content coming through the pipeline. If we don't hire a social media manager, if we don't hire someone to organize for us, like it's all going to go to waste, you know? And that was us recognizing our weakness because we had watched ourselves drop the ball for so long that it's like, okay, are we getting serious or what? But you know, that ultimately was a recognition of like, the CEO of the company has ADHD, something fierce, and we need to do something about it. You know, it wasn't like, oh, well, Ben just needs to get better at fucking posting on social media. It was like, no, we need to accept that like that's not going to happen because it would have happened by now. Relinquishing control and not being such a control freak. Here, I'll give you a leg up. Go on without me. You've got this.
Will that work?
I think so. Yeah, I think it warps me to you. All right.
Or not.
But yeah, I think. Did you ever have any like watershed moments of really? Do you remember the first time that you finally decided, I can't do everything myself. I have to accept this, and I have to ask for help. Was there like a big moment of that in your life?
Definitely when I ran events, because I used to run this annual like video game concert / tournament in Seattle called Arcade Armageddon.
If you told me that, I don't remember, but that's really cool.
That was there's more over here.
All right.
Yeah, and that was a case where like I didn't need help. These days, I'm trying to do as much as I can, and I feel like, you know, it's kind of on brand for me to do so, to be like, hey, like you can't have executive function as an ADHD person, but you know, if you can get away without doing it, then more the better. All right, here and quick, no. All right.
Wait, I got this. Oh my God, no, I'm not gonna die like this. So yeah, you said back when you were. Oh God, no. This was the best idea I've ever had. Okay, what were you saying? Oh yeah, I had asked if there's like one moment that sticks out where you decided you needed to ask for help.
Absolutely, like running an event, but now I'm really trying to do everything on my own, and it just takes a lot of systems, a lot of tools, all the things.
Yeah.
But you know, it's what I teach people, and a lot of times people don't have the luxury of working with somebody else. But definitely, like if you're trying to like run anything big, like a business, or like, then you really kind of doing the business like a service if you are trying to do everything on your own. And that's like scale too. I mean, like even if you don't have ADHD, if you're trying to do anything big, you can't do it by yourself. So it's just like working with people in general. But yeah, I really do believe executive function can happen if you have ADHD, and it comes down to the motivation thing that we were talking about. You know, like you just have to want it bad enough, and then seek out the systems. Thank you.
Yeah, I think
and build all the tools.
Patience, Ben. Patience is a virtue.
It's only going to get worse.
It's only going to get worse. This is the first level, basically. And we are not crushing it. We are digging our own grave, in fact.
Hey-o.
Hey-o. So, yeah, I think I was talking to Steph about this, or maybe fucking Nick Newhouse, and I was like, maybe I should be looking for ways to spice up the things that I'm working on, and sort of, you know, always looking for ways to shake myself out of complacency, because then by its very nature, I will be interested in it because it will feel fresh and new, and I'll have like the recency effect. I'm curious if you've ever like done that with like a part of your business where you're like, this is getting boring, I don't want to do it anymore. I still have to complete the task. I need to find a twist, you know? Because that's something that I've been thinking about is like, you know, if we
all the time, yes,
all the time,
and also more importantly, planning for this in advance. Oh, not this guy again.
Putting twists on things to get, you know, old boring tasks done. Do you have examples of that?
Or maybe like figuring out a way to delegate too. I mean, this is kind of going back to like finding help, where knowing in advance that like when this hyper focus wears off, I'm not going to be able to do it anymore, and just planning for that. Whether it's being like, okay, I'm going to start, you know, like hiring out help for this for somebody else, or I'm going to try to automate something like while you're still focused on it. You're like, I don't need to automate things. I don't need to like have these systems. So I can just do it on my own. I can do this for
just
hours.
Brute force it, yeah.
Yeah, but eventually that's not going to be the case. And like all the little systems that you can develop, all the like type A type things you can do. And for example, you talk about like, you know, making video game remixes. like if you have a system for that, you're like, okay, I'm going to release something every 3 weeks. I'm going to follow this format. I'm going to do these things and like make these printouts about the way I do it, like a standardized system of notes. And then it's just something you do, and then you can focus on the parts that are fun without getting bogged down on the things that you find completely boring by now.
Yeah.
There's no one size fits all answer to that. And habits also help a lot too, because if you're doing the same thing every day, like, see, one thing I've been doing, I've added like 30 minutes of Ableton, the production, because I was like having a harder and harder time fitting that into my days, doing both software and coaching. So it was like, where do I fit that in? So like, okay, before I start all my other morning routine, like all the journaling and everything, I'm just going to have breakfast and then just do exactly half an hour, like no more, no less, and then move on. And it's like, if I don't get much done, it's okay. It's only half an hour. And if I'm really flowing, it's like, well, maybe I want to go back to something. I'm excited the next day.
Just a quick interjection on that. I have found that
oh shit,
if there's stuff that I really need to get done that I'm procrastinating on, something that's been effective for me in the past is forcing myself to do that thing first, like as soon as I wake up. Because even if you're... called? I don't know what that's called.
Eating the frog.
Eating the frog.
Yes.
So you just get it over with. Is that the expression?
Basically, it's like all the things you have to do today are like all this like stuff you want to eat on your plate. You got all these like fun foods, some like delicious, some just kind of bland, and then you've got this like big slimy frog on the plate, and you're like, that's disgusting. Why would I want to eat that? And
but you got to eat it.
Yeah, so it's just like start the day, eat the frog, get that out of the way, and then you have all these other like tasty things you can eat throughout the day. So that's awesome that you're already doing that. That's a brilliant plan.
And that ties back into the fact that, a morning routine or habits, a list of habits for someone with ADHD can look more flexible and not always in the same order and not always at the same time of day. But anyway, your morning routine.
So like, I know it's like difficult, but I would really recommend trying to do things in the same order. And it's just like, some days it won't happen, but the closer you try to stick to that, the easier it'll be. And like the more variation you allow yourself, it's just going to like make it more difficult for you. These little confettis are killing me.
So so the intention should always be to set habits in the same order, but you should maybe
and then realize that like some days like your brain will just say no.
Yeah, giving yourself.
So wake up. I'm just gonna like put my controller down for this because otherwise I won't be able to answer this.
No, you're good.
Basically, like, wake up, have breakfast and coffee, make my bed. That's the one thing. Like if you have ADHD, make your bed every morning first thing. That's probably the most important.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I do the dishes, like take out the trash, clean litter box, just kind of get like my overall space into like a normal, no deep clean, but just being like, before I start things, seeing clutter just kind of reminds you that I'm not currently having good executive function. So getting to that baseline. And then I'll usually like do the to-do list for the day, like check a calendar, check my to-do-list software, and then get a paper list. So I've got a couple of different notebooks I use every day. This one's like the actual like daily list, usually about 15 things-ish. More than that, I just want to put them back in like medium or long-term storage. Do that, and then I do like a type of journaling, sometimes called fear journaling, just basically want to get negativity out. I got this from The Artist's Way. And sometimes I do like 5 minutes, sometimes shorter if I'm feeling fine. Once that's out, kind of like flushing out the bad, then I do gratitude, journal gratitudes and brags. So it's like, I'm proud of myself for this and I'm grateful for this. I do that like outside of my deck. It's usually nice weather in LA and just kind of like, there's no devices, no phones or computers anywhere near me, just me and the book. So kind of like getting your mindset right for the day. Yeah. Then come back and like actually start doing like deep work. And then, but like one thing I do though, like after like looking at the calendar, making the plan for the day is I like identify the blocks. I'm like, okay, I have like 3 hours now. I use a second notebook, write down like, okay, this is what I'm going to do for these 3 hours. And I'll put this on top of the other one. So like, I cannot see that 15 long list for the day. And like, I'm not allowed to look at my long-term lists at all. It's just during this block, and I set my timer for that. It's like, I'm only looking at these things. I used to use a whiteboard for this in my current space. Like, there's not really a good one in my vision. I have like whiteboards everywhere. So yeah, it's just like while you're there, and if you finish it early, that gives you, now I can procrastinate mindfully, or if you're flowing, you can go 5 more things. Yeah, so it's all about the blocks. And then, okay, that block is over. Maybe you have a meeting, maybe you have a phone call, maybe not. Maybe you just take a break, play some games. Then when you're getting ready for the next one, open up your calendar, open up your like big list, kind of like get back in planning mode. So it's basically like a pivot constantly between planning mode and actual like deep work mode.
Interesting. So how many blocks or like how many phases, how many times do you loop this? Like how many times does this gameplay loop of your life happen where you're planning and then working and then a break and then planning and working and break?
It really depends. Like today I had only like 1 block I could get because there's just like so many meetings and things, like, going to the gym, phone calls and stuff, which is just tricky because like with ADHD, you really struggle to kind of have that little minute of executive function, like the 30 minutes between calls where you'd be like, oh, make some phone calls. Like sometimes it's useful to have like an easy list, but that doesn't really fit into my current system. Do you ever do that with an easy list of like stuff that doesn't take a lot of effort to like fit in between things?
Yeah, no, I will make lists. Like if I'm particularly struggling, I will make lists that include the bare minimum sort of self-care stuff where it's just like take a shower, give all the pets fresh water, take the trash out, like load, like stuff that generally doesn't use a lot of spoons, but I am prone to procrastinating on. And it's like, then I can slot those things in between my work where it's like, and I generally don't do it that way. I've been trying to, the big thing that I'm working on now is showering first thing in the morning. Like I wake up, the habit I'm trying to build is like wake up, feed the pets, give them fresh water, and then like immediately take a shower. Like maybe eat something for breakfast, but if I'm not hungry, then I just immediately take a shower even before I have caffeine. Like just take a shower, get dressed, and then I have my morning coffee. And I also put a bunch of avocado oil in my coffee because coffee gives me the jitters, and having fat with it is I have coffee with a big old glob of fat and sugar in it. So it's kind of like breakfast. But then I start my work day. Not great at it, but I have in the past like made low stakes lists where it's just like, I can tell that I'm having a rough day. So I'm going to put some easy stuff on here where it's like, I can look back on them and go, you know what? At least I folded the towels finally, So yes.
Really, really, really good idea. And I've done that sometimes. It's just part of the trouble, like when you really get into all this organization stuff, especially if you teach it, is you end up with a lot of overlapping systems and you don't always know which one to use. And if you try to use all of them, you're going to be spending all your time organizing and not enough time doing. Yeah. And where that line is, so I basically like kind of like change my system every few months or so, like swap some things out, like what's working right now. Like, I'm not really meditating much right now, even though I know it's good, but it's also really hard if you have ADHD. Do you do that?
Yeah. I used to be really big into meditation. I got up to, I think there was about a week where I was doing a 45-minute meditation first thing in the morning.
Wow. That's impressive.
And it started to get a little wacky. Like when you start hanging out with yourself like that for that long, it gets a little psychedelic. But I don't currently meditate. But what I love about meditation is even a 3-minute controlled breathing exercise, counted breathing, focusing on your breath, like even 3 minutes, 5 minutes can do so much for just your general anxiety. I don't currently meditate actively, but like it is something that I'm sure you feel this way. It's like, I'm always eventually going to get back to it, right? Because I know it's so good for me, but it's just like, I'm so busy.
Yeah. I still do it like at least once or twice a week, but it's not part of my routine right now. It's actually usually like if I have some kind of like, like muscle soreness or something, like I need to stretch or I need to foam roll this thing, I'll be like, okay, that'll be my meditation. And for example, like, just laying doing the angel stretch, I'll be like, all right, instead of just doing the minute, which is all I need, I'll set a timer for 5 minutes and that'll be my meditation. Kind of like 2 birds with 1 stone type of thing.
No, that's great. That's the most ADHD thing I've ever heard. It's like the only way I can meditate is if I'm doing something else, which is the opposite of meditating.
mean, it's the trouble with like all these different things, like the different kinds of journaling that I do, which is so good for your mindset and anxiety and like looking forward. But it also takes time and effort, even though it's a habit.
Oh yeah,
a habit takes less, but still.
It sounded terrifying to me when you started journaling multiple times before you started your workday. I was like, I could never be me. This sounds insane. This is a crazy man.
It is insane until you do it every day for a long time, and then it's just automatic. It's just like brushing your teeth. You're like that takes zero effort. It's just something that you do. Or I don't know, maybe that's hard for some people in the chat, but that's always the example I use. Like, right, brushing your teeth. It takes no effort. But yeah, like once you do it for a while, then it's just like, oh yeah, it's just like my thing, and it actually kind of becomes pleasant. And maybe you zone out at one point because you're like, oh. But I think the most important one there is, just like doing like the brain dump of just getting like your anxieties and allowing yourself to really be whiny with this. Have you ever heard of The Artist's Way, the book?
No, but you've mentioned it once already. What is it?
Yeah, that's right. So it's a 12-week program. I've done a few times, and finally actually did it full 4 years ago when I first moved to LA. And it's designed for like people with writer's block or creatives, anybody that's really trying to figure out their creative self.
Yeah.
And there's like different things you do every week. You read a chapter, it has all these different assignments. And my own program was kind of a little bit based on this format. But every morning you write 3 pages, and you're encouraged to just like stream of consciousness, do not stop, don't think about it, just like let whatever your brain's thing. And a lot of times that just becomes really negative and whiny. Like, that's good, get it out. And then, because like if you don't get it out, it's going to be there in your brain anyway all day long. So you got to deal with it at some point. Yeah,
that's a big part of songwriting for me. Is like, if I write songs to express emotions, and like a lot of times, like if I end up feeling bad about those things, I can revisit those songs. But it's similar to journaling. It's bottled up, and you just have to get it out. So I think that's a really cool concept of just like letting yourself be negative in a way that like you're sort of framing it like I'm getting it out of my head and onto the paper, so I don't have to think about it anymore.
Yeah.
That seems really valuable. So you wake up every morning, you do a whiny journal and then a positive journal, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then you said you do long-term planning and short-term planning, or
I get my daily list first before I do the journaling. And then it's just more like whenever I sit down to actually do work. The long-term planning, and that really happens weekly. To like create the list for the day, you got to look at your calendar. You got to look at, bringing things over from the previous day. And what other planning software, if you have like Google Doc that you like took notes in the night before, scanning that, just kind of like doing the big gather. And but the getting things done framework is like kind of the basis of a lot of what I do. And I don't implement every little bit of it perfectly. But the concept is just like, with ADHD, you're always going to have all these little thoughts that might be gone in a second. You're like, oh, this is a great idea. And then it's just like, wait, what? Like setting down your keys in the wrong place. And that's why you really need a capture system, whatever that is, whether it's like whiteboards, notebooks, software, apps.
Charming.
But just make sure that what?
Charming.
Yeah. Some way that if you have an idea, you can get it down and trust that is going to funnel into like some kind of central system. And that's kind of what I'm talking about.
Like it'll eventually come to fruition or be thought about again.
Yes. And a to-do list is a software that's kind of like one of my sources of that. That's not a whiteboard or a notebook.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of like reviewing the stuff that came in, and some of it you just want to like put away for later. But as far as like long-term stuff, like scanning the things that you took it in your capture system, but it's not like important enough to go in your daily list yet. You want to like file it away somewhere. So every week you go and just kind of like scan over the stuff you filed. Usually you're just like, okay. But every now and then you're like, oh, you know what? It is time to, start building my new Twitch setup or something like that.
Yeah. Do you, so we use an app called Notion.
Notion? Okay.
It's basically like a company organizational app that kind of has unlimited possibilities, but there's to-do lists that are like today, this week, this month, no priority, right? So,
and then I like that.
And then, I basically my job is to tell Charming every single idea that I don't want to forget, or every single thing that I eventually need to do, because there's 2 types of tasks for me. There's, I'm just going to do it right now while I'm thinking about it, or I will forget this if I don't tell Charming to put it into Notion, right? Like those are the only two types of tasks that exist. I'm going to do it right now because I'm thinking about it, or I'm going to forget about it. So, you're describing this funnel, this sort of this capture system, which is like, I have that through an employee and like an organizational app for a company. But it is interesting to hear the similarities and be like, oh yeah, I have that. Mine's just like more of a traditional support system and, a team of people. But that's also just because I'm trying to do way too much at the same time. But yeah, so all my to-do lists are in this app, and, and then we have weekly meetings with the company. Once we started having weekly meetings as a company, like we started saying way more on top of stuff. Stuff started getting done way more consistently, like almost immediately. We just started meeting, every single Tuesday. I might try the journaling thing. It sounds like something, I don't know. I think I need to get the showering thing first.
Yeah, one thing at a time.
For sure. And you know what? That's one thing at a time, I think, is perhaps the one tried and true coping mechanisms I've always carried with me. Is no matter how shitty of a day you're having, no matter how worthless you feel or how useless or how you just can't get out of bed or you can't accomplish anything, you can always fall back on like, well, let's just do one little thing and give myself the grace to there's something that I don't remember who I heard it from, or maybe I came up with it. I don't remember. I'm sure somebody had said it before me, but basically like it's almost impossible for you to always get every single thing done on your to-do list for that day, because everything takes longer than you think it's going to take. Distractions happen, fires have to be put out, you have to improvise. So I think it's very common for people who have ADHD, or just people in general, to get caught up in this idea that if they plan to do something and they don't do it, they have failed. And it's like, if you don't do your entire to-do list for that day, like just cut yourself some slack, give yourself some grace, know when to tap out. That was honestly knowing when to quit. You said
give yourself some grace.
Yeah. Give yourself some grace. Roll over the tasks that you didn't get done until the next day. Clock out. Because this is how people get burnout. Whether or not they have ADHD, I think burnout and ADHD go hand in hand, but I think people overwork themselves because they can't realize the moment that they should just tap out and go to bed and tackle it again in the morning. And I was really bad about that. I would stay up until 5 a.m, banging my head against a brick wall, trying to do the simplest task, just like I did when I was a kid with my parents, when all I needed was to go to bed and wake up and start it first thing the next day. And once I learned when to clock out and to allow myself to be done with work, whether or not I finished everything I wanted to, that's not the deciding factor, right? The deciding factor is, has your executive dysfunction completely taken over? And if it has, you're done for the day, because you've probably been working for 8 to 10 hours anyway. And like, if you're sad that you didn't finish your checklist, get over it, because you did a lot today. You did your best. And next morning, like,
even if you only worked 1 or 2 hours,
yeah, absolutely.
This is how depression starts, is that like people get like so worked up of what they didn't do instead of focusing on what they did do.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my mentors earlier this year said something that was really, really good about talking to somebody else that was like very busy and feeling like they weren't getting that. And like, what's the one most important thing you can do today that will move you forward towards your goals? Because if you think about it, like a year from now, you look back, all this busyness isn't going to seem important at all. But you think about the things that actually might be a little bit outside your comfort zone, and you might be putting off, not because it's that hard or that time consuming, but it's scary in some kind of way. But if you do that one thing every single day, in a year, you're going to have like 365 really important things that get you there. And that's going to make a really big difference. So yeah, but it's really easy to get caught up in just being busy. You've got that list of 15 things, and you see that one scary thing on there. It could be the frog, or it could be just something that like, it's maybe not that important. You get 5 things done that aren't that important. And then really like it's your dreams that kind of just start gathering dust at that point. And this is how people get into this day to day and just getting by.
Well, if our dream was to continue playing Shovel Knight, we have given up entirely.
All right, let's beat this boss.
I'm wondering if while we try to beat this boss, we're going to focus on something.
Right,
ironically,
you gotta get me control back.
Oh, sorry. No, not like this.
There we go.
We're good. All right, chat. Now's your time to ask questions. We're not reading chat until after we destroy this man. But if chat has specific questions for either of us, but most importantly, Dan.
What does Dan think about using marijuana for ADHD? So there's actually been studies that marijuana can actually relieve a lot of the ADHD symptoms. Obviously, it also has effects on your memory. So it's a bit of a trade-off there
it
where
exacerbates some
yes,
symptoms.
you will have more focus, but you can't remember what you're focusing on. So, I mean, every now and then I will do this where I'll use marijuana kind of like brainstorming. But using it like in large amounts and like regularly definitely comes with a lot of downsides. I will actually like microdose sometimes, like working on music over the weekends. Just like a little one, I take like a 5 milligram gummy and cut it into 4 pieces, and then just have a ton of those. So it doesn't get you high, but you get some of the effects without having a lot of the downsides. So just be careful with it, because like the more you do, the less it's going to help. And doing it all the time, memory issues will start to develop.
Yeah, I can piggyback back on that. When I am under the influence of marijuana, I am more creative. I have new productive ideas. I can get more motivated about creativity in general, but like I also just like straight up fucking forget the thought I had 30 seconds ago, or straight up forget what I was doing. Like I'll walk into the kitchen, I'm like, I have no idea why I walked in here, and it's never coming back, like so it's that is the trade-off. I completely agree. Let me put this guy down.
This is Rena. She is a certified women's intimacy coach, and one of the big reasons I got to becoming an ADHD coach in the first place. So if we will definitely continue to talk about ADHD, but any other just like mental health questions, relationship questions, obviously as well. Talk about that. I was trying to see if we could play a little Jackbox.
I'm waiting for Jackbox.
I am.
Oh wait.
It's nice to meet you, by the way.
Nice to meet you too.
This is Ben.
Hi, Ben.
Thanks for coming on the program. It's a very professional stream right now. I'm trying to see if I can make my Switch work.
Okay, I've got some questions to look at here. So Nest Dude, the thing about, we were talking about this, earlier, so you heard the conversation about medication. Medication is a double-edged sword, especially if you're starting a little bit older. It can be a big help, but a lot of people have really bad side effects, and finding the dosage is really tricky. And there's also some that are non-stimulant, but those come with different side effects that are kind of more classed with, traditional antidepressants. Even not antidepressant, but they work more where you have to like take it every day. So if you want to experiment with medications, they can do a lot of help, and that'll be the one reason to get the diagnosis, I think, as an adult. As a child, like you might get more, the schools might give you more time with tests. As an adult, from what I know, like the main reason to get the diagnosis is to try different medications and see if they work for you. So that's kind of like up to you at this point. I don't think you really need a diagnosis to be an ADHD person,
Be an ADHD person. You know what? I think I will. Okay, I'm just going to put on just chatting, because that's really what we've been doing. It is funny that... Switch, why are you so loud? Be quiet. Okay. So now I just have to share this to Yoomst.
I used Guile's theme in a reel recently, and like nobody recognized it. I was very sad.
You got what?
I was using Guile's theme in the background of a reel, and like nobody recognized it.
Well, it does go with everything. And that's a damn shame. Okay, I think I can do full screen projector over here. Oop, no, we want windowed projector. Windowed projector. And then I can screen grab that to you. The only problem is it's probably going to mess up our cameras temporarily. This is going to be meta. Share your screen. There we go.
Because
Yeah,
we were
now-
playing.
We were playing Shovel Knight. So the only issue here is now our cameras are all messed up. But I can fix that. Actually, I can probably just turn them off, honestly. It's going to be quicker.
Yeah, sure.
All right. What are you guys' go-to Jackbox games?
Whiplash.
Yeah, Quiplash for sure.
It's we have the new one. Did you guys get the new party pack?
Not yet. Oh.
Nice.
Yeah.
We also don't have it. All right, let's get out of Tetris, but we do have Quiplash 3, which is pretty darn good.
So if the stream is playing, are they going to be like way lagged?
No. I mean, they'll have it in real time on their phone.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So, we just gotta find it. Which party pack do it be? I think
Any
it's-
other ADHD questions or we're getting set up?
There we go. Can y'all see the stream on your end? Like, can you see you should be able to, I'm screen sharing into Discord, so you should be able to.
Oh, there
There
it
we
is.
go.
Yeah.
Sweet. Thank you for doing all the effort to get all these moving parts working together.
Hey, it's my pleasure. Thank you for coming on the program. It was a very, very interesting conversation. I think we both had a lot. I mean, I knew we would have no shortage of things to talk about because we both literally have ADHD, but hopefully it was helpful for the audience so far. For anyone who's interested in the VOD, it will be up on my Patreon on the playlist with all the other stream VODs. Or if you're subscribed on Twitch, you can go back and watch the VOD as well.